order. It appears we have a quorum. We had a couple of members that checked in and went to other meetings and will be back. And so I think we'll go ahead and get started. We have a lot to do, as you'll see from the agenda. But in an effort to try to keep us on track and make sure that we are as efficient as we can be, I'm going to take a lot of the Memorial Highway bills up in block. Okay, so if you will follow along with me, there are two of these that I do need to keep separately for discussion. One of them has a committee sub, another needs an amendment while we're in committee. So my first motion is going to be that we take up Senate Bill 2002, 2003, 2155, 2529, 2532, 2533, 2542, 2545, 2546, 2547, and 2588 in block. And so this is everything that you see on the first page with the exception of 2531 and then the last two bills on the page. Yes, sir. That one is not included in the block. If I called that number, I apologize. I intend to discuss that separately. Does anybody have one of these that you would like to set aside and discuss separately? All right, the motion is that we take these up in block. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, and I will give a brief description rather of each of these, and then we'll entertain questions at the end. Senate Bill 2002 is a memorial highway bill for a segment of Highway 45 in Lowndes County after World War II Army veteran Bradford Freeman. Senate Bill 2003 is the dedication of Highway 12 in Oktibbeha County for former police chief Lewis Jones. Senate Bill 2155 is to designate a section. You know what? I have made a mistake here. I intended to leave Senate Bill 2155 for a separate discussion. All right, so. So this, I'm really not sure procedurally what I need to do. I think I will skip over this and come back in a moment, okay? We'll have to clean that up in a minute. I apologize. Senate Bill 2529 is a dedication of Highway 145 to Bishop Leroy Horn. And then we've got Senate Bill 2532 to dedicate Second Bridge to Boyd Sojourner. He was a former supervisor. And then Senate Bill 2553 was a dedication of Second Creek Bridge on Liberty Road for James Carter, also a former supervisor in that area. Senate Bill 2542 is to dedicate a section of Highway 8 to Jeremy Allen Boyles, who was a former sheriff in that area. Senate Bill 2545 to dedicate a section of Highway 35 in Panola County after Constable Ray Hawkins. Senate Bill 2546 to dedicate a section of Highway 51 in Panola after Deputy Joe Kenneth Cosby. Senate Bill 2547 to dedicate a section of Highway 315 in Panola County after Nolan Metatol. And the final one in the block, Senate Bill 2588, is to designate the Warren County Welcome Center after Commissioner Dick Hall to be called the Commissioner Dick Hall Hospitality Station. Do I have any questions about any of those that I have discussed, with the exception of Senate Bill 2155, which I do intend to set aside? Any discussion on any of those? Do I have a motion? Title sufficient to pass? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Now let's move to Senate Bill 2531, and I believe Senator Horn is going to be explaining that bill to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 2531 wishes to add a section of Interstate 55 here in Jackson, Mississippi, in honor of Representative Alice Clark, and it would be called the Representative Alice Clark Memorial Highway. Madam Chair, at the proper time, I do have an amendment I'd like to offer. But I will make explanation and point out that in section 2 of the bill on line 21, you know that we have a statute that says that any elected official has to be out of office before a section of highway can be named for that person or not. And what's reflected on line 21 is a deletion of that requirement in the case of Senator Clark, Representative Clark. And it's largely because of the reputation of Representative Clark. She has a stellar reputation. She's not in the best of health right now. And we felt that it was appropriate to go ahead and name this road while she's still in office and while she's still with us. And the amendment that I'd like to offer, Madam Chair, is that we also tend to only do a 1 mile section of a highway in honor of an individual. And this original bill, as it's drafted, it's a 6 mile stretch. And I'd like to be recognized to offer an amendment to make it a 1 mile stretch of I-55 South, starting at County Line Road and extending for 1 mile in Jackson, Mississippi.
You're recognized for the amendment.
I so move.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Do I have a motion?
I move we approve the
You
amendment.
did move. I'm sorry. I guess I'm a little rusty. This is our first meeting of the session, so forgive me. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we're on the bill as amended.
I move Titus Richard do pass committee sub.
Is there, let me make sure there's no discussion on the bill as amended. Is there a question? Okay.
Question. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 questions about it. One is, unless the amendment was made, I'm confused as to why we would name a highway a memorial highway for someone who's living. Is there, I'll ask that question first. Is there an explanation for naming it the Memorial Highway when we've got somebody that's still alive?
Well, my understanding that something that's done in memoriam is not necessarily to someone who's already passed. But if you have a better suggestion in terms of the naming, I'd love to hear it.
I frankly just don't think it would be appropriate to name it Memorial for someone who's still living. And let me go to my second point. Really, it's more of a point than it is a question, Madam Chair, and it's that I am concerned. I've got the utmost respect for Representative Clark and have absolutely nothing against her. I just am concerned about the dangerous precedent about naming something for someone who's still in office. And, you know, I don't know if Representative Clark is retiring this year. I don't know what her plans are. If she continues to be in office, and that's fine too, but this has absolutely got nothing to do with Representative Clark. I don't care if it were any of you or any other persons that have served as admirably as she has served here in the legislature. I just don't know if the precedent should be set that we start naming things for people who are still in elected positions. And there may be precedent. We may have done this before.
I believe there's precedent, Madam Chair. In fact, and with regard to the naming of, I believe the Department of Education after Representative Billy McCoy, that was done while he was still in office and still with us.
Okay. What about the question on the
I'm
memorial?
sorry.
What about the question on the memorial?
The MDOT building. I would be trying to be recognized for a motion, Madam Chair, that we strike the word memorial out of the title of the designation of the highway.
You're recognized for that motion.
I move that we will strike the word in line 2 in the short title, the word memorial, and the rest of the bill would be conform to that. Line 13, I think, is the only other place where it's referenced.
All right. Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, back on the bill as amended now. Is there any further discussion on the bill as amended? Is there a motion?
Tyler Sufficient do pass committee sub.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that bill will be reported. Next on the agenda, we're going to move to Senate Bill 2602, and this is a bill in my district. It is a memorial highway of Section Highway 25 to name in honor of Cash McGraw, and then we added a section here. We're working off of a committee sub. I got a late request in to name a bridge in my area also. And so that language is going to be added. The bridge to be known as the Stacy Dale Ricks Memorial Bridge in honor of the late Stacy Dale Ricks. I want to point out, when I initially dropped the bill, I didn't realize the length of this highway turned out to be 6 miles. So I want the committee to know I made that correction in this committee sub for the section 1 of the highway portion to only be 1 mile. Any questions on this? All right, do I have a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that will be reported. That will conclude all the memorial highway bills that we will take up today. We'll move into the general bills here. Senate Bill 2559 is simply extending the repealer on the harvest permit. And you'll see on line 138 of that bill, it will extend the date to 2027. That's all it does. Are there any questions? Do I have a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one will be reported. Next up is Senate Bill 2561. This is a bill that's designed to change the vote requirement of decisions that are made on the projects that come through the Emergency Road and Bridge Fund. Under the current statute, the way it's written, it's a requirement of a unanimous vote. This simply makes it a majority vote. We think the fund and the program works beautifully, and this will provide a little more flexibility, ensure that it continues to be successful. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am. Senator Blackman for a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So why was it a unanimous vote to begin with? Do you know?
I had that same question. I don't remember the discussion surrounding, we put this into the law in 2018, if memory serves, and I was here, but not intricately involved in that, so I'm not sure. But I began to ask myself, how many other processes are in place in government where it requires a unanimous vote? So I just thought it made sense to make sure this program remains workable.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other questions? Do I have a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That one will be reported. Next up is Senate Bill 2562. This bill was requested by the Department of Transportation, and it's simply to allow the agency to be able to make use of available federal funds for building out electric vehicle infrastructure in our state. Is there anybody here from the Department of Transportation? Hello, Will. Would you like to come on up just in case there are questions? Now, the way I understand it, this is discretionary. If you sort of look through the language here, it says the Department of Transportation may in its discretion design, construct, operate, et cetera. Down in the second section, the commission may contract. So they're not requiring that they do anything in that regard, but there is some federal money available for this purpose. And the agency tells me they just need this in statute so that they can draw down on the federal funds for this purpose should they decide to pursue it. So are there any questions? Senator Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So presently, there is no federal money for this?
50 million.
Will, if you could move to, do you mind moving to the microphone in case there are people watching online? Thank you.
Right. Test one, two, there we go. It'd be $50 million over 5 years. Yes, ma'am.
That's coming to the state or that, okay, that's coming to the state.
Yes, ma'am. We'll just simply be a pass-through to set up the stations with the private partnership.
Okay, and will the state establish the plan as to where these charging stations will be, or will those private companies establish the plan?
Yes, ma'am. In partnership with the federal highways, we had to submit a plan, but generally it's very vague. The federal rule just says every 50 miles. And so we basically just submitted the interstate system, and then every 50 miles, there will be one.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Senator Fillingame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Will there be a bidding process on that, or is this something that the department just selects and chooses on its own?
Yes, sir. So we'll solicit RFPs from companies that will partner with private entities out there to set the stations up.
Thank you.
Other questions? Do I have a motion?
Title sufficient to pass.
All in favor? Are there any opposed? Okay, that bill will also be reported. Next up, Senate Bill 2589. This bill deals with the West Rankin Parkway. It's a project that's been on the books for a long time, and my understanding is this language was needed to be put into place so that they can pursue additional funding for this project. If you'll notice the changes in line 9 and 10, the language is added that the funding may originate from federal government, local government, or private sources. And that's all it does, is provide a vehicle for funding, and the pursuit of funding will happen, in another bill in another committee. Are there any questions? Is there a motion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that will be reported. And last up, we have Senate Bill 2539, and Senator Super is here to present this bill to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Over the past few years, we've had a lot of people, I've had a lot of people contact us about side-by-sides, UTVs, ATVs, able to use those on like county roads. So what this bill does is allow side-by-sides to be tagged. They have the same requirements as a vehicle, with an exception of a windshield wiper, but you have to have blinkers, brake lights, headlights, rearview mirror. And this is only for roads like a county road, no highways, no interstate. There's a limit of 40 miles an hour that, you can't go on a road that exceeds that. And as far as fees, it would be the same as like a motorcycle. There's an $8 fee for like a privilege tax. This is not required, only if it's optional. If you want to use the ATV or a side-by-side on a road, then you would get a tag to do that. There is also a registration fee of $14. The first $5 goes to the state general fund, except for 5% retained by the county. This is the same as vehicles, motorcycles. There's a $4 component that goes to the Mississippi Trauma Care Systems. The only difference will be there's another $5 fee that goes to like interstates. That fee instead proposing that it stay with the county that the UTV is registered. So we'll put a little money back into the counties. The ATV is not going to be used on the interstate or major highways. So we're not going to have that use on those roads. So I'd rather keep it in the county. There is a provision in here that allows UTVs to go across like a highway, but there's some restrictions in here. And if you'll look at page 3, lines 51 down through 72, there's some restrictions on how you would go across a highway. Like you have to come up to like a 90-degree angle. Of course, you have to stop and basically go straight across the road. You're not allowed to go down the major highways. And I think that is about it. It's a big bill, but that's current law. There's, like I said, just major changes. What's been stated, just, I want to see the money go back to some of the counties. I know that'd be a big deal in my area, there being a big rural area, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any question? I see a lot of hands here. Let me start on my right and go to the left. Senator Sojourner, you're recognized.
That's okay. Don't get Bart throwing, Senator Williams throwing the mic at you. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Senator Suber. First of all, I do notice it's a proposed committee sub. Is there something different in here?
There was just a little tweak, and that was like that last $5. It was excluded because the UTVs would not be used on the major highways or interstates. So I wanted to keep that $5 in and just have that money go to the counties instead.
Okay. And then did you mention that there were monies in here going to the trauma centers as well?
Yes, ma'am. There's a $4, like I said, that's current law with all our vehicles and motorcycles that are tagged. That $4 is going to be the same for UTVs to go to the trauma fund.
Okay, I guess, so currently we currently don't require UTVs and ATVs to be tagged, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Um,
And this wouldn't require it either. This is going to be an option.
It's an option if you want to access the county road. And then, so then what happens? I guess at that point, if you have a tag and you access the county road, or whether you have or don't have the tag, I suppose you are subject to being pulled over by a sheriff's deputy patrolling the county road.
Yes, ma'am. Current law, you can be tagged and, you can be cited for driving down a public road. That part will not change. But if you get the registration and you get a tag on your side by side, then at that point, you would not, get a citation. So if somebody didn't, or somebody decided not to get a tag and they're riding down the road and they get pulled over, they can't get a tag for no light, no registration, kind of as you would with a vehicle.
For liability issues or purposes, I guess this UTV with a tag would now be treated the same as a vehicle or a motorcycle on the roadway.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Senator McClendon, I believe you had some questions. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Is there a time restriction on these, day, night, 24 hours a day?
No, sir, but there's restriction. You have to have headlights, brake lights, blinkers, as you do on a motorcycle or
Say if a municipality has a noise ordinance that fall under this?
I don't think this would change anything on an ordinance by municipality.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Williams, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Suber. These are county roads only, so that would exclude municipal roads?
I didn't.
Are these county roads only, which,
Well, it's county roads, any roads. It can be a paved road, like a state aid road.
okay,
It's going to exclude any road that has a speed limit of 40 miles an hour or higher. So it wouldn't be any state highways, no interstates.
are the supervisors okay with this?
Actually, I met with a bunch of supervisors yesterday.
Really?
Most of them were happy with it because like in my area, and I know in your area, people are doing it anyway. And I've talked to the sheriff's department also and the sheriff's association. They were fine with it because most of them told me that they don't write tickets now.
Yes, sir.
And I feel like if we go ahead and tag it, might get a little bit more money down to the counties.
Is there any information that speaks to the safety concern of this by allowing this one way or the other?
There's lots of safety information available. I've not looked at anything particular to this. I have talked to some people in Arkansas and Tennessee who have both done something very similar. Like Arkansas, you just get like a sticker on your four-wheeler.
So do these states have laws on the books now that you're referring to?
Yes, sir. Tennessee, you actually get a tag and you can drive down the road. I can't speak to specifics of the law up there, but I can get that information to you.
So it's safe to assume if we do this, all the laws that now are on top of automobiles will apply to these, such as driver's license, age of 16, and anything that applies there will apply here. Is that correct?
Right. And now you're supposed to be 16 to drive a side-by-side or a four-wheeler anyway. That's already law, but you still need a driver's license.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Whaley, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for your work on this. I know you've worked hard on it. Got a few questions for you. I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. If one owns a piece of property and they're not interested in getting a side-by-side or ATV off of that property, they're not required to buy a tag, correct?
That's correct. This is optional.
So they can keep on going about like they've gone for the last however long they've had the side-by-side or ATV, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so, I'm thinking from a agricultural standpoint, some farmers have properties from, they'll have to get on a road. So this would allow them to tag the vehicle, the side-by-side or the ATV, and go from point A to point B as long as it's not traveling down the state highway, but they could cross the highway, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and one last question. I've read through this on the underlined portion several places, and I hadn't pulled the code to see, but it does say all-terrain vehicle, ATV, and recreational off-highway vehicle, but it doesn't say UTV, which you and I both, from the side-by-side world, we know
Right.
side-by-sides are classified as UTVs. Does recreational off-highway vehicle, does that cover the UTVs?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure we weren't leaving that out because I think this is
I want
gonna
to make
help.
sure, because I want to make sure that UTVs are in there.
I agree. Thank you.
Senator Fillingay, did you have a question? You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the tagging of them, does it correlate that if you do get tagged, that then the portion of the law that says you can be ticketed for being on these roads goes away?
No, sir. There's that code section will still apply. It actually has it might be over there, but the code section is still there that shows if you don't, there's actually a lot you're supposed to do. You're supposed to actually take a course before you ride ATVs. You're supposed to have a license. All that will still be in place. But if you have a tag, you will not be cited because it gives an exception once you get the tag. I can tell you the code section.
I'm just curious. I mean, I like what you're trying to do with the bill. I just don't want people to assume that if I go get this thing tagged, then I'm not going to be stopped because I'm now street legal, as they say. Is that really the case? Are we amending by reference or how are we doing that?
Well, no, I mean, to be on a road, you're going to need to have a tag, and that's kind of what this law is intended to do. I can't help what people go do. I mean, my kids ride around now and they don't have a driver's license, but that's on me to do. If they get pulled over, get a ticket, then I'll take care of that. But that's on me to know the law and know what they're supposed to do. All this is going to create is allow them to actually use our roads legally on a side-by-side, as opposed to now people just running up down the road and there's no, there's no recourse other than, getting a fine or a citation.
Okay, and I'm still confused about that. Maybe I'm missing the point. Is it that we're allowing it once they're tagged to not be ticketed?
Right, you wouldn't be ticketed once you got a tag, because it's the same way with a vehicle. If you ride around, you see people all the time with no tag or expired tags. I mean, they're subject to get a citation or pulled over for that. It would be the same principle applied to the UTVs.
If I may jump in here, it may provide a little clarity. My understanding is once the vehicles are tagged and they're deemed street legal, as long as they're obeying all the other rules of the road, there's no reason for them to be pulled over and ticketed. Now,
Okay.
it creates a situation where they're held to a higher standard They've got to include lights, certain lights and other safety mechanisms on the ATVs and the side-by-sides to make them street legal. And I think that's the benefit that I see from the bill is it promotes safety. Because we all know, those of us who are from the rural communities, this happens on our county roads. Well, let's put a mechanism in place to encourage the safety aspect of it. But as long as they're obeying the rules of the road, so to speak, as the law is written now, then there won't be any reason for any citations, is my understanding.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get to. And then the second question, when you go to purchase the tag, do you also, is there an insurance requirement? Like there is with cars and that sort of thing?
This is the same statute. I don't know if the insurance is required. I mean, I think by state law, you're supposed to have insurance, but this bill doesn't address the insurance part of it.
Well, I just think that's something we should probably know.
I'm fine adding that in there. I mean.
If I may also jump in, I'm going to ask for some research to be done before we hit the floor. But my understanding is by way of reference to the existing law that the same insurance requirements would be in place on the ATVs as well. But we will look into that and give you a concrete answer for sure before we take any further action on the bill. Okay?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Senator Blackman, for a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, when these individuals get this tag, are they then going to be notified of all of these rules and regulations?
Well, like a vehicle, when you go buy a vehicle, I mean, I guess people assume that they're street legal. The problem with this is going to be, there's lots of people who have older side-by-sides that aren't going to meet the requirements. So I actually met with pretty much every manufacturer that sells these UTVs or ATVs. And there is a kit that you can buy. It's very reasonably priced that they can apply to these and make them street legal. I feel like there will be a little bit of a learning curve. I feel like once, if something like this does pass, new side-by-sides ATVs would probably be equipped to be street legal, but that is going to be a challenge initially for these. You know, people have had ATVs and UTVs for a number of years, and so we are going to have, I feel like, a learning curve trying to get them street legal. And we've tried. That's why I tried to incorporate everything that's current law, like with vehicles and motorcycles, with the exclusion of the windshield wiper. But it's not necessarily needed on ATVs or UTVs, but you know, obviously it is an option.
So I guess the sheriff's departments throughout the state will be notified as to.
Yes, ma'am. Like I said, I met with the Sheriff's Association about, and it's very similar to your question. You know, what's going to be required on UTVs. Most of the sheriffs were indicating, well, if we do stop somebody and they don't have necessarily street legal, then we would, you know, let them know of what they need to do. Maybe not cite them initially, but.
Well, I'm looking at this crossing is made at the angle of approximately 90 degrees. So who's going to inform these individuals that that's what they're supposed?
I mean, that'd be your law enforcement. And the situation was, you know, we didn't want people on side-by-side UTVs running up and down, you know, highways, because, you know, I think that would be a big liability. But there are a lot of situations where they do need to cross the highway, and we try to make it as short as possible, where they would come up, stop, you know, come to a 90-degree angle, and you go straight across. You know, we don't want to have any accidents. Just want to have the least amount of liability out there as possible. But if we didn't allow folks to cross the highway, you know, we'd probably have a few issues with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And another thing I want to say, I mean, you know, I know this is a little bit of work in progress, and I'm open to any suggestions. I feel like it's something that we do need, and if anybody has an idea, I'm all for trying to do what's best. I mean, I'm not trying to just push something through. You know, this is something I think will benefit us as a state, and, you know, if somebody has an idea, I'm happy to work on that with you.
Thank you for your work on this. Any further questions? For a motion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that'll be reported. Thank you, Senator Stuber. Now, do I have a final motion? All right, thank you.